G'day, guys. It is Down Under Sigmar time. It is 2021. It is January, and where on earth the year go? As always, you are here with me, the coach, and you are with Clint, the godfather of Age of Sigmar in Australia, probably even the world, to be honest. I'm just going to straight up say that you are the world grandfather of Age of Sigmar. And the sexiest man in Age of Sigmar, not Clint, it is Dan, AOS Shorts. I'm sure you know who he is. You've been to his website. You have seen all of the cool stuff, the lists, the tweets, the man who lives, breathes, eats, and a Warhammer hero. I almost forgot. You are a Warhammer hero. Where's your medal? You should wear that around the house.
Actually, I do not know where my medal is. It is somewhere packed away. But anyway, evening. Good to see you guys.
How on earth do you not know where your medal is?
I don't know. When you get so much stuff sent to you, it sort of all disappears somewhere in the hobby room.
What a humble brag. Like, oh, yeah. I don't know where my Warhammer Hero Award is.
It's over there with the rest of the free stuff. Oh, I don't know.
Just drowning all in product and free stuff. It's just maybe it's weighing down some of the old battle tomes that I no longer care about.
Yeah, I don't really know where to go from that start. Yeah. Anyway, happy New Year, lads.
It's nice to have you, man. Like, obviously, in a different world, a sliding doors moment, we would be all catching up in about 2 to 3 weeks' time. And we'd be having an absolute ball when it comes to CanCon. But Clint, how are you? I didn't get to ask you. How are you going, mate?
I'm good. I'm very good. I'm enjoying not having to prep for CanCon. So
that would be a little bit different, wouldn't it? It would. What would be in an alternative universe where you had CanCon happening in 2 to 3 weeks' time? What would today look like for you, or what would this week look like for you?
I would probably have a piece of terrain in my hand, painting it while we're talking. Probably that would be, yeah. It's going to be my quietest January for quite some time. You
would be preparing for checking lists, because lists would be coming in about maybe next weekend. You'd be worrying if GW would actually release the FAQs and screw everyone's lists all together. So that's a fun little time. Terrain, last minute sponsorship.
That's what I mean. It's a very quiet January, and I'm kind of okay with it, to be honest. It's good to have a break.
And I imagine also getting some brownie points before you disappear from the family. But this is the time you get the bank up, right?
Absolutely.
What would you be doing this time, Dan?
Prepping for CanCon. Either finishing off models or whatever to take to CanCon, or plotting Australia's demise in the Tasman Cup. One of the two.
Oh, here we go. Here, the humble brag again. Not only my Warhammer hero, I would be plotting the demise of the Australians. Well, it's good to have you. You only won last year because I was doing a painting tutorial with Vince Venturella, so good work on you. But
didn't they win the year that you played as well, though?
I had one game with the Squigs. That was literally the first. It was like the first game I had with the new Battletome Squigs, and I played Fraser Barker, and I tried to throw my Mork's Mighty Mushroom 6d6, and I rolled a 13 and hurt myself. So it was that moment where I realized I made a bad decision for the tournament, and it was all right. I did okay, but 6d6 is not as much as it sounds.
No.
So how are we all? What's going on? What is happening? How is your January treating you so far? New Year's, what is the dealio?
Just painting. Back to painting after a quiet Christmas, pretty much, and cutting back on models, which I'll talk about later.
So in today's episode, we are going to do a little bit of a reflection on the year that's gone past, the hobby year, which was a rather crazy one, from our motivations and incentives. I know for myself, I'm very motivated for tournaments, and those deadlines are something that I enjoy. Obviously, we had some challenges. We had new releases. We had a whole bunch of things happen last year. So we'll have a bit of a reflection on what we went through and what was our hobby year like, and then maybe some goals and aspirations and things that we want to achieve in the coming, I guess, 12 months. And it'll be nice to kind of reflect on this to see how we went, but also to hear what we're striving towards and what's important to us right now. But Dan, how has your 7 days of January treated you so far?
It's been good. Just enjoying the summer break, some time off work. It's the sort of one decent time of the year to get a long break off work. My work's closed down to the 18th, so we get a nice long break. Enjoying the sun, doing a bit of camping, hitting the beach. It's good. And in the meantime, building skinks.
I do love it. And I see you got a nice little Christmas card at the back. You've got your custom dice box from Pro Painted.
Yeah,
nice
so
little...
that turned up just before New Year's. So I built the stack. So I got the sort of dice layer, the measuring sticks layer, Seraphon or Dream Lizards or whatever it's called, tokens, and the one for my Deepkin. So I built that, put that together, got to slap some PVA on it and start painting it. It'll be good.
You're not Seraphon accessories.
Yep. My Dream Lizards tokens. Yep.
They are pretty cool, and unfortunately, the oak veneer is out of. It's currently out of stock, so I have to wait till I get mine. But
I went for the MDF because I wanted to paint it. So I thought, because I'm going to go for black and red for mine once I seal it up first.
Of course.
In theme.
Yeah.
Or as we say, it's on brand. He's
always got to be on brand, mate. Though I'm not wearing the t-shirt, so
where's your hat? You need a shorts hat. Clint's got a hat. I've got a hat. And g'day everyone in the chat as well. I've got Jonathan. I've got 2 Jonathans in the chat. I've got Jerome. I've got War Machine. I can see a whole bunch of cool people. So hello, welcome. It'll be nice to actually hear what everyone else is doing at the moment, what their hobby goals are. But Dan, we've got to sort you out with a hat, man. You can't be a content creator without a hat. Don't
look good in a hat, mate.
Does anyone really, though? Like,
what are you trying to say, Clint?
I was more talking about myself, but if you would like to take that as an insult, you can.
All right, well, I'll take the hat off. I got a fresh haircut today, so I'll take the hat off. That's weird. I'm actually going back to it.
So short.
Too weird. The cool sensation of those headphones on my head. But we are all here to talk about 2020, to talk about 2021, talk about what we've gone through, what our hobby is, what armies we picked up, what armies we've put down, what armies we're thinking about picking up. But Clint, what has happened over the last 4 weeks since we last caught up? What's the dealio?
In personal hobby or AOS news? Well, okay. Whatever I like. Well, let's go with the AOS news. We had some awesome Slaanesh releases or previews on Christmas Day and then another one on New Year's Day. Some fantastic different units and battle tome coming. Are we excited for that one, guys?
Oh, Dan, what are your thoughts?
Oh, it's amazing. It's going to be an awesome release. The models are exceptional. The palanquin looks frankly ridiculous, and I can't wait to see what hobbyists do with it. It's going to turn into a million different things. The archers look super cool. I love the steeds of the new mounted archers and the javelin guys. And it's great to see some more options for Slaanesh. Like to see Mortal Slaanesh and the lean into sort of more general versions of Excess. Going to be super cool.
Yeah, for me, that's probably the thing I've really enjoyed is just seeing a different version of Excess that we haven't seen before. And also, I've always been a fan of Al-Mukhtar's Desert Dogs, the Arabic kind of themed old Warhammer unit. And I've been buying and I've been begging for some type of Arabic, Arabian, Mediterranean type models. And they've just knocked it out of the park. I love the fact that the palanquin has a shisha, the hookah smoking device on it. Like, that sold me. I love it. In fact, I had Arabic tonight for dinner. Like, that's how much I love it. So not they have any connection. I just love Arabic.
just theming your dinner to Warhammer previews. I like it. That's
if it wasn't for Down Under Sigmar, I actually probably would have sat down with the shisha, and I would have had shisha and had my fresh head double apple with a hint of lemon or a hint of rose water. But unfortunately, I had this show. Otherwise, I'd be smoking hookah. No, that's not how it is. But
it's phrasing.
How cool! Like, speaking of the new releases and speaking about the previews, and Dan and Clint, I'd love to hear your thoughts. The other stuff, Clint, I'm sure you're going to talk about the other stuff that was in that little video, the teaser.
Yeah, the Witch Hunter, quite possibly. Like, it's quite likely to be a Witch Hunter. There's whatever happens to be holding that big axe. There's some cool, I think it was like knights or something for 40k. There's lots of cool little preview stuff happening.
And the cloud. That's what got me over the line.
That was the hand gesture. Never mind.
Yeah, that was the monkey magic.
I was trying to figure. Like, what have I forgotten? Because I thought you were doing some sort of gun or something. I'm like, what have I forgotten here? And then no, cloud. Yeah, the cloud.
Cinderfall, it's not Goku. It is monkey magic. It is coming from the mountaintop because Monkey is funky and he's going to help Lumineth.
Because I don't think there's much to add other than what Vince and Tom covered in their extensive breakdown. Like it's good to see the second half of Techless Lumineth coming. Agreed, Tyrion's going to be a long way off, but the sort of second half of Techless Lumineth will be good. Really interested to see the new Death faction. Be cool if it sort of leans more into the sort of Celtic barrows rather than vampirates, to swim against the tide of the endless call for vampirates. I think Celtic barrow whites or whatever kind of force would be cool, with a whole load of undead orcs and undead ogres and things like that would be very cool.
Martin Orlando shaking his fist angrily as he's just, his big display board with all that sort of stuff on it. And he's like, now I could do that army with half of the convert without, having to convert so much. Trendsetter.
I love it. And as Cinderfall's also reminding us, the battle llamas, whatever that might look like. It's cool that we've got, we've already gone through 4 nations so far. The Lumineth book, While I'm No Lawmaster, does talk about, a bunch of the elements and, starting to unlock those elements to see what maybe the air looks like and what they bring to the table.
Yeah, it will be, and what sort of mechanics they play with, whether they try and bring in new rules mechanics that are associated with the air, or it's just a sort of generic lore gloss over existing mechanics that we've seen in other books.
But either way, it's very cool for Lumineth players.
Definitely, because you read that book and it feels like, as we all have said before, it feels like half a book, right? Because it was sort of half a book's worth of units, clear indication of where they're going. So it'll be good for them to get the other half and a few more options for those forces, for some more list building options.
Yeah. And again, Cinderfall brings up a good point here, is talking about, we've kind of got a bit of a flavor of the river, the air, the mountain, but, what does Zenith look like? Or, we haven't seen a preview to Zenith yet. So,
it's going to be an interesting year.
In terms of that, to answer Luke's question about the Zenith, I just think back to that early Hish art that we saw of the sort of yellow stepped cigarette pyramid shape diamonds, sort of building off that for the sense of Zenith and enlightenment and peak, and so we might see a bit of that aesthetic going into that faction or that temple of it.
Yeah, that's a good shout, because that was some of the first previews we saw, was that Hish was going to be like these peak, symmetrical, yellowy type pyramids and, prisms. Yet we haven't quite seen that yet. So it's a good shout.
Yeah.
Clint, anything else that's happened since we last caught up?
What have we got? We've got the new store anniversary models that got previewed earlier this week. So
new Beastman model.
So we've got the Stormcast chap with the axe hammer and Minotaur head accessory, and also a Necron Cryptek as well. So quite cool models.
Yeah, that Cryptek was one that had been floating around in the back of some of the early army shots from a few months ago. So I think that one had been seen before, but they.
It's always good to see a good picture of it.
Yeah, I'm no 40k player, but just watching the Necron releases has just been exceptional. Being like my last 40k games were in the 90s. I think around 5th edition maybe, and just seeing how Necrons have kind of evolved and what they're doing now to kind of reimagine does get me excited to what they might eventually reimagine. Things like vampires, for example. People have rumored, and Warhammer Weekly was talking about this week. The potentially a plastic Soulblight kit. How do they reimagine that? Seeing what they've already done to Sisters of Battle, seeing what they've done with Necron, seeing what they've done with some of the Primarchs and the Lords. So I think that's really cool. But the Storm model, give me something that's not Stormcast, guys.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of this one. I don't know, it just feels off to me. I feel like it's like if he's holding the head, he should be sort of maybe leaning on the axe or holding the head out, or like it just kind of is, to me, posed a bit funny because sort of like one of his hands is sort of down and then the other one's holding the head, which is also down. And yeah, I don't know. And he has a awful haircut. But anyway, you can always change the head. But I just think the pose is slightly off.
I will slightly correct you here and say that it's not a he. The article.
Oh, sorry.
No. That's fine. That's fine. It's something that kind of get glossed over a little bit. But I think it's one of our first gender neutral pronouns models. So I think they refer to it as they or them. So
then they updated the article and the next sentence said he.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, it was. It said they to start, and then they updated the article.
Oh, I might have to revisit the article. That one's missed me. I remember seeing it as very neutral language.
Yeah, no, I saw a few people thinking of it as sort of a missed opportunity on that point, but that's people far more qualified to talk about these things can cover that than I can.
Yeah. I had heard it being referred to as he, which is why I continued on with that. But yeah, no, that would be a good point. Although we have had a couple of female Storm models, which has been really good. Like I think the last 2 were female, so that's really awesome. Not to say that we can't have more, or it's about time it's a man, but just like we have had a good gender diversity in Stormcast Storm models. Yeah, going for the last couple of years, which is good.
Yeah, and I love Larissa, for example. Look, we're not going to go too deep into this. I think we're going down a rabbit hole. That is a different episode. We want to talk about that one coming up. But either way, I thought it was quite cool what they had released. But certainly, they've had a couple of cool Stormcast models for me. I would love to see them revisit. I know they did a Nighthaunt one some time ago. I'd love to see something else. Maybe it was Slanesh, maybe an opportunity to update an older sculpt that isn't in the plans for, say, Warcry or Underworlds. Maybe.
But yeah, I think 40k players are happy that it's not a Space Marine for once.
Yeah.
So they got their win this year. We might have our win next year.
Anything else that's happened?
I was just looking at my notes. As soon as we lulled, I went into my notes. We had the Armies on Parade judging through Warhammer TV. I'm not sure who watched that, or because I know, Anthony, you have an episode with one of the winners.
Yeah, I had a recent chat last week with Kit, who was a featured winner on that article. So that was really cool because I had submitted an Armies on Parade board. I was very skeptical that I would even get a mention, considering I broke like the first rule, and that is you're not meant to mix kits, especially Lord of the Rings kits with Age of Sigmar. Yeah, the new line cinema stuff. So unfortunately for me, my display board was about a Gargant raiding a city, and there are no houses in Age of Sigmar terrain kits, unfortunately. So I had to tap into the Rohan kit, and I knew that I'd be dancing a fine line. So not that I thought that I would ever win, but I knew that at the same time I was pushing it to even get a mention. But I learned a lot along the way, and that discussion that I had with Kit was about like what we learned through the online program, which I thought was an interesting one. I saw a bunch of people who normally enter Armies on Parade locally throw in the towel and go, "No, I'm not competing on the internet. No, it's not for me." But I threw my I threw my hat in the ring and thought I'd try something different, and it was a lot of fun, and I learned a lot that I'll be carrying into this year.
Yep. Which could very well be an online one again. Who knows?
Well, that was my speculation. That was what I was saying to Kit. Was I think I'm planning for another online version. Not that I know anything. It's no secret insider knowledge here, but I'm just based on how we're going at the moment. I'm preparing for another online one, and if it happens to be face to face, that's a bonus.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there is, and I understand why some people weren't overly happy about it, but like things being what they are, like I'm still happy that they did a competition. It's just there is a difference between seeing a display board in person and seeing pictures. Absolutely, that's just one of those things. So.
Yeah, like my smoke machine that I had is certainly a physical, be there in the moment kind of wow factor, while on the photos it doesn't look nearly as good. But Dan, what were your thoughts on Armies on Parade? Did you have a chance to look at the photos?
I saw the results, and I realised that I was horribly unqualified to identify what was a good result and a bad result, given the number of what I thought were stunning things floating around on Twitter of people's Armies on Parade. So I'd be really interested. I haven't watched any Warhammer TV breakdown or whatever of the sort of judging and the approach that they take to judging. So that would actually be very interesting to hear either from someone in the studio or someone like Vince talking with that real artist's eye, breaking down some of these boards. I really liked the Stormcast one. That was featured in the article, the multiple layers, the modular nature of the terrain. It was all just one piece that sung really well together.
Yeah, I was really impressed by there was a Space Marine one where they were all kind of lined up, and there's a really nice like rolled carpet, and I think they had a Primarch at the front. And even there was like a Lord of the Rings battle scene where someone was like destroying a wall, and it was just like explosions everywhere. I thought there was some really cool pieces that I'm already, and we'll talk about this in the goals and what we're focused on, but I'm so focused on Armies on Parade right now, even though that it is 11 months away.
That's fine. Being ultra prepared is perfectly fine.
Well, compared to my 2 months before this year, well, last year, but hey, we're jumping topic. We're getting too far down the rabbit hole.
My favorite Armies on Parade board, just because of the sense of fun, was the Halfling Blood Bowl team in the picnic basket. It was Graham Shirley, I think. It was well painted, but really cool themed, and the whole thing was just that.
Did you ever see the guy who took an entire halfling Cities of Sigmar army to Warhammer World in a picnic basket? I think that's where Graham had got the idea from. I haven't spoken to Graham, so I don't know, but I've seen a full AOS halfling army in a picnic basket before.
That's
I remember seeing David Griffith, replicating his own version of cities with the halflings. But I know, OG, there was an English person. I think it was a 1,000 point event. They had run.
I think it was a doubles.
Yeah, it was like I remember it wasn't a 2K army. It was it might have been doubles.
Yeah. They had the halflings riding the Griffhounds for the Pistoliers and things like that. It's a cool force.
You just got to watch out for Yogi Bear if you're going to put your army in a picnic basket. No? Okay. Right. I'll just be over here in the corner with my old TV references.
Smarter than the average bear, Clint. You are smarter than the average bear.
Yeah.
But that was cool. Armies on Parade, just while you have your sip of drink. It was very cool that they had it again. And I'm hoping that people will strive to it as another goal. I think I'd like to see more entries. And I'm hoping that Games Workshop release more photos of other people, not just the winners, but I'm hoping we do get to see other people. So while I got to see some cool people on Twitter, I know that it's probably just the tip of the iceberg of all the cool display boards that were submitted, and I'd love to see what other people submitted.
They could easily put a top 50, top 100 up on a website.
They already have an Armies on Parade website, so it would be easy to just add a tab for, online 2020 or whatever. I just remember that Twitter and Instagram were amazing on submission day. Like in that day or two before and on submission day, Twitter and Instagram just lit up with amazing hobby, and so it would be good to have all that collated.
It's just unfortunate because we only get to see so much, right? We don't, all these people that I'm not following or I don't know about. I'd love to see what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why compiling it together would be really good.
Cool. I've got to just go grab something. I'll be 1 minute.
That's all good. Clint, anything else that we've gone through?
No, I think we're pretty good on news, so we want to just kick to hobby.
I'll also say that this month's White Dwarf, this month in Australia's White Dwarf is the Spider Fang. Spider Fang finally getting rules. So Trog's got rules previously, Squig's got rules, Spiders now get a rule. And if you're watching this live right now, tomorrow I'm doing a list discussion based on the Spider Fang rules. So it'll be nice to see how they compare and what you can now do with your spiders that you couldn't do with your Gloomspite Gits book. So that's probably another shout out I would call out. Broken Realms, I said this on Warhammer Weekly that there's a cool article coming up very soon. If you're a subscriber, you would have got the email this morning. It is about a battle between Khorne and Slaanesh. So knowing how much they hate each other, this one is a treat.
Yep, and that sort of ties in with Slaanesh, which we know is coming. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, cool. What do you guys? Is that all? That's all we've gone through the news. We got the Paladin stuff, hobby stuff. We had no new releases. No new releases. We've had Armies of Parade. We had White Dwarf. We've had Broken Realms stuff or previewed.
That's pretty much it for the news, I think.
Yeah, and sort of looking forward, it's going to be interesting to see how much Tier 5 in the UK impacts the already delayed delivery schedule, which was on the basis of the pre-latest lockdown changes.
I'm imagining Slaanesh is okay. Normally they sit in the warehouse from what I hear, not that I have a key to the warehouse, but normally they sit locally in the warehouse for a couple of weeks before the being available. So I imagine Slaanesh, which we think is going to be in January. It's going to be in February. It's whatever happens after Feb. That's I think is going to be up in the air.
Yeah, I think this year will look a lot like last year was, with stuff being chopped and changed and shifted and moved down the schedule and things like that. So,
well, funnily enough, there's the other piece of news is that we're moving into a fortnightly release schedule as opposed to the monthly, so the weekly one that we used to.
Yeah. I remember when they used to do that once upon a time. I think in the early 2000s, early to mid 2000s, it used to be fortnightly. You'd get something at the start of the month and then something 2 weeks later. Like it'd all be in that month's White Dwarf, but they'd sort of stagger the releases out.
Look, it's been a long time since I remember that schedule. I don't know what it's like with you, Dan, or what you remember. But it'll be interesting to see, and probably we're really lucky that this isn't. Well, this is not meant to be an Age of Sigmar year, or at least we know the first couple of months is probably going to be more 40k 9th edition. So let's see what, and as you said with the Tier 5 stuff, how that affects us.
Yeah, it's probably worth shouting out our thoughts with all of our UK folks who are currently going. They're now back in lockdown, and we know like that does affect people. And reach out if you're not feeling the best. Because it can be lonely, but the hobby is awesome and the hobby community is awesome. So make sure that you reach out to people and have a chat if you need to. So
that's really well said. And look, we're probably very privileged in Australia and New Zealand that we don't have the impacts like other countries are having right now. So I fully appreciate that while we're going to events and we're running things and we're able to go down to the store and do our normal life, to some degree, others aren't as lucky. But that's a really good call, whether it's jumping into Discords, again, guys, my Discord link's below, whether it's a hobby hangout and just going on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook saying, hey, who wants to jump onto Skype? Who wants to get on a call? Who wants to just do some hobby and chat or just chat? That's so important. So really well said.
Yeah, I think I think last year was very tough on people, and Christmas is a tough time. And then, unfortunately, the lockdown is the garnish on top of that crap sandwich. So, yeah.
I will say that, I think what has Vincent Notley on Twitter, a administrator on Warhammer Television, just one of the guys not one of the guys, but he does an amazing job behind the scenes. He had made a comment on Twitter, which I fully agreed with, and he had said that, without this hobby and without the community, I think it would be a very different 2020. So I think that has kept the energy, the enthusiasm, the motivation, the communication alive, whether whatever social media or whatever medium you like to communicate with, it's been a shining light throughout the year.
Yeah, absolutely. Rightio. Do we want to talk hobby? What hobby we've been doing? Speaking of doing hobby.
Well, Dan's doing hobby, isn't he?
He's doing hobby right now.
I know. I didn't see what he was doing. I know he wanted to do hobby. Dan politely asked him to do hobby, and I said I couldn't stop him even if I wanted to. So
Dan is trying to kill two birds with one stone and make the most of limited hobby available time to do the show and scrape mold lines at the same time.
I get muting yourself on that one.
Yeah. So I am working through the Seraphon army, continuing to build the Seraphon army that I started last year. So the theme of the Seraphon army is that it is Southlands, inspired from Warhammer Fantasy. So inspired by the idea of Southlands lizardmen taking on Tomb Kings. This is a Seraphon army that's heavily got OBR links. So I've been hitting up all my mates with OBR armies, begging them for bits so that I can do some conversions. I've got the sort of walkie legs guy to build a slan palanquin out of. I've got some various bits and pieces to stick on the back of Seraphon Stegodons, building a Pterodon chief out of the OBR Endless Spell, the Dead Bird. So that's going to be my slow burn project over the course of the year. And my aim is that by the end of the year, I'll not only have one tournament army, but I'd be able to do a tournament army for each of the 4 sub-factions within Seraphon. So it's going to be my major project for 2021.
Interesting.
That's massive. That is kudos to you.
Yeah, and I do need to get some OBR bits to you, Dan, for said project. So
yeah. Clint is one of the kind people I begged OBR bits.
I just had to wait for some more Tech Guard to turn up because I knew that I would have bits left over from that. So
yeah. I do not have any OBR, so I cannot help you, Dan. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I actually wanted an OBR just for my Gargan. I don't even have that. So no, I can't help you. Sorry.
That's okay. Last time I touched Seraphon or Lizardman was probably in the very first starter box of Warhammer that I ever had. where me and my brother split the 5th edition box with Brett's and Lizardmen. So I haven't touched a Lizardmen model since then. So I'm really enjoying this project, even if trying to build 96 skinks in one go is soul destroying.
Yeah, but once you've done that bit, that really
Correct.
frustrating bit. So that's way
except for the fact when bolt splitters are no longer broken and I need some form of other weapon variants other than 100 armed with bolt splitters and shields. But anyway, I'm I know the fate that I'm getting myself into with this project.
That reminds me of my 160 goblins that I've built. And when the points went down a little bit for shooters and people were like, oh, now let's take some shooters. Like, I'm not touching a goblin again. I'm not touching the characters are fine, but I'm not touching the little stabbers, the little shooters.
Yeah,
they're dead to me. The models that I've got are the ones that I'm not touching anymore.
Yeah. I feel like Dan just needs to live with his choices so that when javelins become really good, he can just take bolt spitters anyway and just live with his choices.
Thankfully, because I've been I did my usual thing, which I'm trying to get away from, which was I decided, oh, this would be a great idea. And then I go on all the Facebook buy-sell pages and buy a million sort of half-done job lots that other people have got. So I've got about 40 probably with javelins. I've got about 40 of the old 5th edition skinks. I've on my spreadsheet of model list, I simply have bucket of Saurus because I actually don't know how many Saurus I have. They're just in a bulk lot, half built and painted some form of green. So we'll see.
Yep.
What about yourself, Clint? What have you been working on?
Since we last broadcast, I'm just trying to think over the top of over what I've done. So I think I've painted Arkan for my OBR. I did him the other week. I painted Archaon on my Twitch stream last week. And then this week on the Twitch stream, I was painting Endless Spells. So I've just kind of been bouncing around painting stuff. So painted up the Palisade the other night. Folks, if they follow me on Instagram, will have seen it. But basically, I did it in a rainbow theme. Just wanted to show my son how to because he's been painting Nighthaunt and stuff and just dry brushing and things like that. I wanted to show him how you can use a dry brush in a different way. And so I dry brush blended the Palisade in a rainbow theme from red through to purple. And that was quite fun. And then I'm like, okay, well, now I've got the taste for Endless Spells. So on the Twitch stream, I was painting up the pendulum and the mirrors and the Pac-Man, because despite being on the Heralds shirt, I haven't actually painted mine yet. So, so I've got that mostly done. I've got my pendulum finished. He's all nice and shiny green on his clear base.
I was going to say, you've got the clear base as well. I think you, me, and someone else, maybe it was Chris Welfare, had grabbed it from Travis. Travis had organised those for us. They were lifesavers for the generic malign sorcery endless spells. Yeah. So we didn't have to buy like 7 copies. So
that is the Palisade. So it's not on a clear base just because of the way it's built. But yeah, nice rainbow. So, yeah, that's what I've been working on. Just finishing off the OBR, although I did have 20 Mortec Guard turn up this week, so I'll build and paint more Mortec Guard. But, yeah, just bouncing around. And then painted some more. I've sort of been trying to finish Dorgar off from Archaon. So he's a big model.
It's a very big model.
Just a little. Just a little.
When are you painting some more KO, Clint?
When that other stuff is done. Yeah. Because I've been working through assembly. Like when I'm hobbying with my kids, when you're hobbying with kids, you can't really paint detail. You've got to kind of be assisting them and things like that. So when I've been hobbying with kids, I'll be doing like dry brushing or assembly. So I've been building some KOs in there as well, just that sort of stuff. So that's basically how fast my KO is going. It's like when I hobby with Elliot and Amelia, I'm building KO. So it's like they just have to come out here into the hobby room more. That's what it is.
I dig it. And for myself, I have been painting. I decided in a group chat that all three of us are a part of. The Tom Lyons, I mentioned this on Warhammer Weekly today, that Tom had made a confession that he hadn't completed any models in 2020. Had painted a whole bunch, but never completed them. And I kind of felt the same. My hobby was kind of rather stagnant last year, and got really inspired and painted 100 Zench demons or more, actually, almost 150 Zench demons in the last 3 to 4 days. So 60 blues, 40 pinks, 40 brims, and maybe a couple more. That contrast paint is a godsend, and then dry brush and pick out detail is just incredible. So Zench demons, good for contrast, and more importantly, they're now painted as opposed to being in my display case for years, just not doing anything. Other than that, I picked up today, some Slaanesh, and that will lead us into probably the topic of the episode, which is going to be about our goals and reflections from last year. Unless there's anything else, Clint. You're muted. I don't know sign language. I'm speaking. Yeah, that's heaps better.
Righto. So I was muted. I muted before when I had a drink on the thing, but my headset didn't update when I unmuted. So I was good on the software, but not on the headset. That would have been a better segue had you had the Slaanesh Endless Spells and held up the mirror and then reflections. But anyway, it's all good.
I do have the.
You do have the. You do, yeah. That's good. That's a good one.
But I don't have the Endless Spell yet, because I'm like. What I'm going to do is I'm actually cutting out the goat face, the demon.
I was going to say, are you going to change that?
Yeah, and I was thinking about putting an Endless Spell in there, or we are getting into
the variant with the face, Endless Spell coming out of it, or
maybe
the whole, or put a mirror in.
No, not the mirror. Not the mirror. I'm. All right, we're getting into 2021. Let's talk 2020 first. Let's talk 2020. My 2021 plans have had a complete 360 in the last 48 hours, thanks to Chuck Strengthhammer Moore, who is a conversion enabler and horrible human overall.
So now you can use the wow.
Things I would not use to describe Chuck.
He is a pleasure. He's a lovely man, but he's a hobby enabler. And half an hour chat with him landed like $300 worth of product in my cart that I had to rein back and plan out better. So Chuck is a beautiful man and a hobby enabler.
Cool.
Shaking the finger. Uh-oh.
So let's talk 2020. Let's talk 2020, and maybe we'll start just as an overall, like maybe just an overview, high-level summary of like what was your hobby 2020 like? And I specifically say hobby. I don't want to know about what you had for dinner on September the 19th. Right? More just how would you describe it? What did you get up to? How would you describe it, Dan? What was your hobby 2020 like?
Well, it started off with an amazing hiss and a roar, which was preparing for CanCon, where the only thing that we needed to worry about was whether or not the bushfires were going to get us.
The only thing, yeah, okay, right.
Yeah, as the airport catches on fire, but people can't fly in and have to take various other things. So back when we just had simple natural disasters. And so CanCon was the absolute hiss and a roar. And again, we say it all the time, but I just can't recommend it enough. And all the people in the UK and the US need to come visit us down in CanCon when we all get to meet up again. It's amazing. And then it was sort of all downhill from there on the hobby front.
Clint, what about yourself? Were you down the hill as well, or what was your year like?
So it started with CanCon, which was awesome and stressful because as Dan's already touched on, with the bushfires, and we weren't sure what's going to happen. And I remember getting, photos from Travis or from Charles Black, and it looked like Silent Hill with all the smoke, and we were worried about that. And then come that particular weekend, it all worked quite nicely, and we all got to go and play Warhammer, which was awesome. And
we did have the Friday night freak out, though. We must admit
there was the one near the airport. Yeah,
airport. Yeah. So Doom and Darkness had organised it's a beautiful moment the night before. There is an opt-in barbecue that that Doom has organised, and Doom wasn't there. Or Doom got in really late because his flight was looking like it was being cancelled, or maybe wasn't going to arrive until Sunday. And I remember the Dwellers Below, like Sam Morgan, I think even Rob Symes, they had to hire a bus and drive it up from Melbourne because their flights got delayed. Or I remember Sam had got turned away or turned around.
And there were a bunch of Queenslanders and stuff as well that weren't able to fly in at the right sort of times and stuff like that. At the time they had been. Yeah, at the time they had planned to. Yeah. So, it was interesting. And then I just remember it all sort of kicked off again on the Sunday evening. I remember being at Trav's place, dropping terrain off and seeing the bushfires on the horizon again. And it's like, okay, righto. Gave us a pause for the weekend. So
it was 40 degrees. It was, a bit smoky, but somehow you're right. Like the sea had parted for 48 hours to let us roll dice and play 6 rounds of Warhammer. And then it kind of went back to normal and the country was back on fire. But somehow, miraculously, this one weekend seemed okay. Like we all hung out outside. We chatted. We were in the barbecues. We drank beers on the balcony. It was relatively quite normal to a degree.
Yeah, which is really good. And we, of course, had, the highest number of international attendees that we'd had, folks from Scotland and the US and things, flying in and joining us, which was awesome. And then
we had about 13 of us, I think it was, from New Zealand, plus traveling with the 2 Scots across from Sydney. It's good times.
Yeah. And cool. Anything else, Clint?
As for the rest of the year, kind of descended downhill for a little while, and then I think we sort of opened back up again, and going to events at the end of last year was really good. That was.
So it sounds like I had a bit more of a slower burn than you did.
It kind of peaked and then dropped right off. Oh, and there's a little blip in there where I got selected for ETC. There we go. That's the other thing that's on my thing. That was a good hobby highlight for me last year. But we'll see if that's actually going to happen.
Fingers crossed.
Absolutely.
Vaccine's starting to roll out. Who knows what the world looks like. So I had CanCon as well. I might just change the picture a little bit. And my gosh, did I have a cool start to the year. So we had CanCon 6 rounds. I played Cities of Sigmar, Hello Hard. It was nice to get the cities back out after a couple of years of being on the shelf. Picked up one of the awards that you had for coolest armies. So that was an absolute pleasure. Got to play some great games. One was like with Seth Cook, the Goon Boss. That was an absolute cracker. Hello Heart versus Ogres. Painting tutorial, Vince Venturella running a class the day before, teaching us how to wet blend and feathering, and there were some other techniques, which was really cool. And then come March, I had another tournament, Doom of Darkness's SAGT. So that's why I said I had a bit of a slower burn. I came down from CanCon, still had SAGT, where I ran this bizarre Tempest Eye list. And then it kind of went flat for a little bit. And what was really interesting at the time was I played a little bit of Tabletop Simulator. I still got to have some garage games, and it was kind of okay at a very local level. But there was an interesting little event that picked up about Warhammer 6th edition. And there's a bit of a rebirth. and I signed up. I started building a 1,500 point Empire army, and I wanted to kind of revisit Warhammer Fantasy without the rose tinted glasses, and all while it was kind of nice little distraction while I waited for Suns to come out, the Gargants. Then November, we had the Ever-Chosen events, an Ever-Chosen Everwinter event. So we actually had a 40 to 45 player event happen in Canberra. And, it's kind of had a bit of a swing up. So it's kind of like been some peaks and troughs, but it was definitely an interesting one without the tournament deadlines, without the tournament meta kind of driving us forward. There's a lot of kits that I wanted to buy that were out of stock and were out of stock for a long time. So it made me revisit some projects, some ambitions, and, not being a 40K player, I had no interest in jumping into Lumineth because I knew Gargants were coming, and I had no interest in trying the other game because it's not for me. It just doesn't attract me at all. So
it's good. In New Zealand, we managed to get a few small events in. It was good going and taking the Deepkin and pushing some sharks around. I went to a small 2-dayer in Tauranga in the Bay of Plenty, which had a strong monster focus. So you got extra tournament points for taking monsters or behemoths in your list. You got extra points for keeping them alive and killing other monsters, which was good fun. And we all played with Gur realm effects in play. So we had random monsters wandering around all over the place and things. It was a really fun event. It was good times. The only sort of sad thing on the event front from New Zealand was we were all gearing up for our Team Wars event, which was going to be, I think, 12 4-man teams. So it was going to be our biggest event for the year and our big team event. And then we went into Auckland, went into its second lockdown the day before the event. So we had been 101 days, I think, without a single case of COVID in the country. And then we got the day before the event, so we all went into lockdown.
I remember watching Aiden's emotions on Twitter as, preparing for an event, all things were looking well. All of a sudden, this thing happened. It was really unsure what was going to happen. We didn't know the effects. And then, the cancellation. And I think we all kind of followed the roller coaster and our hearts bled for someone. Knowing, Clint and myself, we both run events, how much work goes into. It's not just rocking up on the day and magically things happen. There's a lot of work that goes into events. And I know I had an event cancelled that I was going to run last year. And I'm at risk at cancelling another event. I've got a March event and Sydney's kind of potentially going into another lockdown. I don't know how we're going to go, but we're kind of on the fence. And like my heart was really bled for Aiden, who was the event organizer for that one.
Yeah, he put a lot of work into it. And you think about, we all know how hard it is to run a singles event and then do a teams event where if you have one person out of the 4 drop, you lose an entire team. And then the impact on the entire event.
By the way, that photo there is of Liam is smashing the desserts from the barbecue. The photo there is a picture of the New Zealand team that had just won their next Anzac Cup victory. I think, was it 9-on-9 this time, or was it 13-on-13?
It was 9-on-9. We won 5-4.
That's right.
Thanks to Lee Wilmot coming home in the game against Liam's OBR.
Was it?
So Lee's Tempest Eye against OBR getting out a victory.
Was it? Because I remember someone was in the lead, and then was it Australia was in the lead, and then New Zealand come back, or was it the other way around where New Zealand were up, then Australia come back, and then? Because I remember it being close, like 4-on-4.
Yeah, it was. So we were, New Zealand got the early lead in the games that we were expecting to win. And then the Aussies came back in the games that we were expecting you to do well in. And so it really came down to whether or not Lee could beat Liam.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was in the painting class as well. So, and that was where there was a funny picture where you, me, and Vince were all gathered around a mobile phone, maybe your mobile phone.
Well, I think it was my iPad, because we were looking at the Teclis getting revealed, and so we were all laughing and laughing in awe, joy. It was a whole disbelief. It was a whole range of emotions as we were seeing Lumineth and we were seeing the Teclis model for the first time, all while we were standing around in Jolt Games in Canberra. So that was a surreal experience.
It's a bit, Clint. It's a bit of like a regular occurrence with CanCon as well. I remember a few years ago, that was when we got the first peaks of Marathi or Daughters of Cain.
Yep.
That first Daughters video with the rock track.
Yep, absolutely. It's because CanCon and LVO share a weekend, so that because LVO gets a preview, we sort of get it the day before generally. Day before CanCon, which it's good because it definitely livens up the discussion at the barbecue on the Friday night because everyone's like seeing all the new releases and stuff like that. It is, however, annoying when you're prepping and then everybody suddenly you're there, you're doing stuff, and then everybody's all watching phones and whatnot like that as they've all been distracted by shiny models.
Well, I think it was a few years ago, I had helped set you up, or we were all doing something, and I remember there was the reveal of the Daughters of Cain, and I remember a lot of people running back to their hotels or running back to their accommodation to watch, and I remember then sitting in my accommodation watching the Vince and Tom, wrap up of the preview, and it's always fascinating, being in the same weekend as LVO, but the cool thing for us is CanCon is the world's largest event. So last year was 240 players on the day, 219, if I remember correctly.
218, 219. So yeah, about 220. I'm happy with that.
Which is pretty crazy. Like when you think about 220 players in an event, it's pretty crazy. The amount of terrain, your boards, the setup, the organization. So very, very cool.
Sorry, it's just laughing at Tim there starting tomorrow on his CanCon 2022 project.
That's right. I'm starting on mine.
I couldn't sleep the other night because I was already planning for next year. So that's how broken I am.
Well, Tim's got to catch up to Ash, doesn't he? Ash has well and truly started his 2022 Suns Army.
Yeah, well, he needs to get it done that Alan time with that level of craziness.
Yeah, his Ash McEwen has definitely flashed his cards out early, so I'll be curious to see some of our best painters. I know Spongy Paint James is in the chat here, and I know he won Best Painted last year. So I'd be curious to see now that the standard is set with Ash with his cartoon styled Mega Gargant. And when I say cartoon, guys, you've got to go watch Ash McEwen. Most of the internet, when he posted these pictures, didn't think it was a real model. They thought it was photoshopped. It was, a manipulated photo, but it's off the charts.
Yeah, I remember listening to the Facehammer Christmas episode that they did, and they were talking about Ash's model, and they're like, "Nah, that's not real." And then I think Les is like, "There's a video of him like turning it round."
Literally,
it is real.
Good old cell shading. I have to say, the thing I am most excited for, one of the things I'm most excited for the Slaanesh release is to see how James does those new models for his Slaanesh army.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think if he's still in the chat, he can answer this. But I think he's kind of doing similar, but I think he's going in a slightly different direction so that it'll sort of marry in. But it's going to be slightly different to his other stuff, which will be cool. Yeah.
I did see his bases he's working on currently, and they are beautiful bases. So I can only imagine what James is going to do with it. Cool. So that was kind of our year, like in a nutshell. And I'm just putting up some other photos. There's Vince checking out the coolest army, which was Danny Carroll's water drum barreled Kharadron overlords, very necromundery, synthwave police. Like, it's this a bizarre concoction of amazingness. And with Joe Bogano from Rage of Sigmar, who came out from America to come see us in Australia, which was really sweet. But did you guys set any goals? Like, when you went into 2020, obviously CanCon is a goal. It's our new year, new army. It's often what people, it's usually like the pinnacle of our hobby year and what we strive towards, and why people like the Aussie Wargamer and I are already talking about CanCon 22. Did you guys go into the year having any other goals? Any maybe certain events you want to go, podium, painting armies, anything like learning a new skill? Did either of you have something that you wanted to focus on last year? Dan, maybe I'll throw it to you first. Did you have a hobby goal?
No, which is going to be a short answer. No, I didn't. I was sort of very much a hobby butterfly for 2020. So I knew I wanted to do a Deepkin army. So that was a sort of informal goal. I had a number of sort of ideas and things that I wanted to do for the website, and new things that I was going to do for that. But none of which that I sort of formalized and sat down and made a commitment to and wanted to really turn into a goal. It's slightly different with the approach that I've taken for 2021, but sort of 2020 was very relaxed. Let's just try and play more games. Yeah.
And obviously, I don't have to ask you about did you get to play more games, because straight up the answer is likely to be no.
I had a newborn son and various other things, which has slightly impacted getting more games in, unfortunately. Not unfortunately, of course, I love my son. There he is. This is me preparing for the show, how organised I was about 10 minutes before the start of the show.
I did ask them days before, like, hey guys, you want to send me some photos of what you're working on or maybe some goals? And I got squat till the very end. So these are all my photos. Me keeping the stream professional. But So you had some things that you strived for, but certainly not necessarily like a hard and fast goal that you were focused on.
No, so 2020 was a relaxed year on that front.
Clint, what about yourself?
Well, I had a bit of a whirlwind 2019, so 2020 was going to be a bit quieter for me. So I'm sorry, everyone. You all had to do that with me. Basically, yeah, I got my quieter year as far as events and stuff goes. So not quite the way I had intended, though, to be honest.
I know for myself, I came off 2019, and that was a year I went to America. I went to Adepticon and had some of the most fun I've ever had in a tournament. And it has nothing to do with the tournament itself, but everything that happened around Adepticon, the fact that everyone stays in the hotel where Adepticon is. So you're almost 24/7, and, you're having dinners, you're having breakfast, there's a lot of cool hobby stuff. I got to watch the Tale of Four Warlords with, the Mortal Realms podcast and Mitzi and Jimbo. And there was just, walking down the halls, there's Duncan, there's Chris Peach, there's, Tom and Vince. And there's just so many, internet faces and names and people that you've met on Twitter. I think, for me, 2019 was just an absolute massive year, and I thought, right, I want to tap into that, but maybe not to that scale. And I'd organised a trip to New Zealand. I had bought my flight already to go to Notorious GT. I'd obviously gone to SAGT. I had a few other events that I was planning on going to, and obviously Sydney GT, which is my big 100-player event that I run. I was ramping up. I had a goal that I wanted to have. So normally in Australia, we ask our players to contribute a few pieces of terrain to kind of ease the burden of their tournament organizer. I had the goal that I wanted to contribute all the terrain on the table. So if I had 50 tables, which is what I was kind of roughly aiming for, times it by 10 per table. So I was looking at owning 500 pieces of terrain approximately. So I was working really hard towards that. But then as kind of COVID hit, I had it all printed basically, but not a lot painted because I had lost the motivation. So It was an interesting one for me. I think for me, again, that Sydney GT was going to be one that I wanted to kind of scale up quite significantly. Now that I'd had a few years of event organizing and reputation under my belt.
Yeah, well, look, your event's certainly growing the right way, right? It's you take these things, you build it stage by stage, and it's the only way you can make that sort of investment in the 500 odd pieces of terrain, ridiculous amount of terrain that you need.
Well, I bought a second 3D printer. I'm learning how to do trophies now, so I wanted to be self-contained with my trophies, knowing how much money I spend on trophies, and I know how much I could print them for. I wanted to be able to own that part of the process, and basically, especially during COVID, where our dollar is stretched more than any other year, and I knew sponsorship was going to be tough. That was something that I was really focused on. But I think. And this is probably going to lead into one of my goals for this year, is now that my 3D printers are essentially free, I've got some things that I can do for good. So,
awesome. So, what were your you're talking about your sort of bit more relaxed year in some aspects for 2020, but did you have any goals on the sort of content creation side, Coach? You have things that you're sort of planning for on the channel?
For the year that just passed?
Yeah, the year just passed before we sort of move into the new year.
Look at you. Look at you, all the content creator questions. Yeah, look, sorry, just coughing. So where did I start? So I was looking at my statistics the other day, and I know for me, I wanted to hit 5,000 subscribers. I think that was one of my goals. And I think at the start of 2020, I was lingering around 3,000 to 3,500. So it wasn't a big stretch. And I think the interesting thing was just maybe to create more variants of content. So as you guys know, I'm probably most known for live content, live discussions, but I don't do a lot of offline producing of videos. And I really wanted to kind of flex that muscle and learn a little bit around video software and and editing and things like that. So for me, I wanted to update my logo. So I had created my first logo in PowerPoint, just with some generic files. So I got that commissioned out, and I wanted to rebrand. I wanted to go to 5,000 subs, and I wanted to produce more offline videos that would complement still the live stuff. I love the live stuff. I love the chat. I love being able to bring up the different discussions and bring that to life, but at the same time learn a new skill. So
yeah, I've so how did you feel it went over the course of the year?
Yeah, it went really well, actually. I wasn't prepared for these questions. This is straight up.
This is what happens when you invite people like me on, who's used to being on the other side of the microphone.
This is the content creating stuff. Yeah, look, I finished this year with I just cracked 7,000. Maybe actually it was just over 7,000. I'm now currently at 7,300 subs, and the next goal that I've got is 10,000, and it's an arbitrary number, but the thing that it allows me to do behind the scenes is it allows me to integrate a Teesprings, which is a merchandise store, with YouTube. I can kind of bring them together. And the other thing I wanted to do is learn a bit more about Twitch. So anyone who's joining on Twitch, hello Twitch. I wanted to kind of learn a little bit about that side of the fence, because it is a little bit different to YouTube. And while I'm not jumping to Twitch, it's not going to be my primary location. It will allow me to do some hobby streams, or it will allow me to do some video game streams that I don't normally do on YouTube. So it doesn't kind of align to the channel. But Clint, I know you're also doing Twitch at the moment as well. So kind of getting back into that content creator lens.
Yeah, absolutely. That's another thing that happened last year, as far as I'm concerned, and as far as content creator stuff goes, is we stuck a pin in the Heralds, aptly timed, because I think like a week later, it all kicked off and Warhammer stopped. So yeah, it was well timed, but that's something that happened last year as far as content creation. But then also started doing the Twitch streaming with painting on Tuesday nights. So
how's that going for you?
it's going really well. It's keeping me honest as far as it's funny because I seem to be painting something different every week, which is it's fun because I just go, well, what do I want to paint? People don't want to watch me paint 80 Mortec Guard across 6 months. So it's like, the endless spells this week. I'm like, oh, what can I paint? Well, the endless spells, they're sort of quick, self-contained. I get to play with lots of color, all that sort of stuff. So it's changed my painting and what I'm doing that way, and it's quite enjoyable. So
it's been good. I've been joining your Tuesday streams when I can, and it's been really cool to see a lot of the UK folk jumping in. I know Darren Watson jumped in the chat earlier. I saw Dan, 9-inch Dan, jumped in as well. I'm seeing a whole bunch of Europeans because I think maybe this is another goal of mine as well. Is I think I don't want to say over service, but just due to the nature of our time zones, I probably cater more to the American audience just because they're more likely to be up at the times that I stream. So I wanted to kind of create a few more pieces of content and be more active to my European guys as well. So I wanted to bring England and Europe some time zone friendly content, as well as continuing to service the American time zone. So that was another thing that I really wanted to do last year.
Yep.
Anything else you wanted to ask, or anything that maybe you wanted to share from your blog? I know AOS Shorts. You've gone from the podcast to the website. You've been really putting a focus on the competitive scene. You obviously got the Warhammer community article, which was amazing to see your meta-analysis.
Yeah, so I've completely forgotten I did that. So 2020, 2020 on the site's been interesting, right? Like my issue with the site has always been that I started it on the basis that I wanted to create the site that I wished there was, that someone else did, that I could read. And so it started out wanting to be everything to everyone because I'm interested in all aspects of the hobby, in the communities, in the clubs, in the painting, in the lore, in the tactics, and the lists, and the full works. And so I tried to cover everything. But there's only so much of me, and I have a full-time job and a family and various other things. And so it's probably late 2019 that I was realizing, realizing how much sort of content creation, or the desire to try and achieve what I had in my head, was having an impact on other areas of my life, which I shouldn't have been putting hobby in front of. So I was making some assessments through 2020 and going, okay, well, how do I have a healthier balance between creating the site that I want to create and covering the things that I want to cover without having negative impacts on the far more important things in life. And so part of that was sort of manifested in the refresh and the redesign of the site, with Sean's design and Clint's help, redesigning the site to really put that focus more on a more limited focus on going, right, okay, well, what can I do and what does the site cover? And it is the competitive match play. And this was sort of happening at a time where competitive match play was stopping or changing. I should say it's certainly not stopped, it's just moved to Tabletop Simulator. And so this sort of moves into a segue for 2021, which is that the aim for the site is that it's going to have the things which I think the stats show have the highest demand. So it's the top list analysis. It's the making sure, because I've got spreadsheets and spreadsheets and spreadsheets of all of the top list analysis for each of the faction. It's putting it up on that site in a way that's accessible and can be edited and maintained in an easy way, and has those sort of list breakdown in a written form, because there's a lot of it out there in terms of Twitch and YouTube and podcasts, but there's pretty much none of it or very little of it in a written form. I have my own views on why that's not the case, or why that's the case, but I do prefer the written word, certainly when I'm trying to go back to something. So
it's interesting you say that, because I had that discussion with Rob Hawkins, a blogging legend, and I am surprised with the lack of blogs in our community. Everyone seems to be opening up a podcast, a Twitch, a YouTube channel, but there isn't nearly enough blogging. And there's some cool blogs, Plastic Crack, Australia, one of Australia's best blogs.
The standout one at the moment.
Probably one of the best in the world too, in our community. Plastic Crack is awesome, but there are so many other cool writers out there that I'd love to see more from, or emerging people who may be not confident in doing video or podcast, but could actually write something up that's wonderful, whether it's narrative, whether it is competitive. It seems like a big missed opportunity for us.
It is. And most of the written stuff tends to be, if it's blog focused, then it's personal project, and it's on those particular lines. The only other site that does sort of decent AOS breakdown analysis, other than the ones that you've mentioned, at least that I know of, is Goonhammer, right? And Goonhammer's got 12, 15, 20 odd contributors.
Yeah.
They're a whole different operation, and that's the sort of scale if you want to be producing large amount of regular long form AOS content. I'd love if you're familiar with the sort of sports media, I'd love if there was an AOS version of The Athletic, sort of decent long form journalism of AOS, but I don't think there ever will be. But I'd love to read it.
We did see, Jonathan, who's brought up the Azir Weekly. So we're kind of seeing that type of content, and it's awesome to see that kind of parody to the Mortal Realms news. But yeah, I'd love to see, looking at people like Strength Hammer. I talked about Chuck before. He's very focused on his daughters. So if you love your daughters, it's awesome. But what about the Sylvaneth players? What about some of the others? And
I remiss of me not to mention Chuck's. My personal favourites are Chuck's articles, where his in-depth breakdowns of the AOS gods. So his AOS gods series, tying back Alariel and Marathi to the world that was and all the way through, they're really good pieces.
Clint, what yourself? We obviously jumped into 2021, and we've talked about our hobby. We talked about some of the armies we worked on. We've kind of talked about some of the events. So let's get straight into 2021. So it is now 7 days officially into the new year as we're speaking. What are your goals? And maybe before I go to Clint, Dan, is there anything else that you've got goals for 2021?
Yeah, I've got reasonable number of goals. So the first goal is a shared goal with Clint, as we have done a pact not to start any new army projects this year. So we are opting out of New Year, New Army. I'm going to hold each other accountable.
Accountability buddies. Accountability buddies.
Yeah, very much so. So I informed Clint the other day that as I was watching Fellowship, I could safely watch Fellowship of the Ring again without the desire to start a Middle-earth strategy battle game army, because of our pact to each other that we weren't going to start new projects. So my goals are, I have got, apart from the Seraphon army, which I'm building and going to start and work on, I have got my Deepkin army and my Sylvaneth army, large parts of it which have always been to the point of not tournament minimum, like a good tabletop tournament standard. But I've always finished the unit and go, right, okay, that's the bases, base colors and wash, it's got a highlight or two, that's okay, that's acceptable. But I'm really going to go and finish that unit off one day. Well, I never have.
It's a lie we all tell ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this year is going to be the year where I'm going to go back through and finish off a load of them, so that they're actually there. They're done. I don't ever have to I can close that window. So I've got a spreadsheet that I'm going to sort of track through or maybe the hobby room log website that I've now seen.
I was going to actually bring that up on screen.
Segue.
Yeah,
I'm actually really impressed with that.
I'm very thankful that Kerry decided to launch that a couple of days after you and I did our spreadsheets, Dan. Like after sitting down and doing all my formulas so I could work out percentages and stuff like that, I'm so glad that there's now an automated web tool that will help me with that.
Let me share my screen, actually. So I was actually really impressed to stumble upon this. So the website is called Pile of Potential. I really do like that. I remember seeing that on Twitter. I think, there was some comments around, my pile of shame, or not my personally, but someone was referring to their plastic, and somebody responded saying it's not a pile of shame, it's a pile of potential. And somehow is kind of being created into what Kerry from the Hobby Room has done is now this very cool interactive, I guess, Excel sheet, but it's more than just an Excel sheet. So this is kind of my hobby. And I put in, my Daughters of Cain project. My only criticism is probably what's lacking here is maybe a percentage. So, for example, like my 20 Sisters of Slaughter, maybe I only do 10 of those and I'm building another 10. It's hard to kind of split out a project unless I break it up into like blocks of 10 or blocks of 5. But
unit size.
Yeah, otherwise, like, this is an exceptional site. It cost me literally a version of this. I've put this link on my Facebook page and maybe my Discord. And you can share your link as well, and you can kind of see what people are up to. So I'm super impressed with this.
Yeah, it's very cool. I'm definitely going to be using it.
It's really cool. Yeah, I haven't had time to punch it all in. Kerry and the Hobby Room have always used, as far as like watching them back a couple of years ago, they've always used Pile of Potential as the positive term for their backlog. So I'm not sure if they were the first, but they're definitely like people who use that term often and in that positive way. So
I'm pretty sure it was a GW staff member. I'm not going to name names, but I'm pretty sure it was a GW staff member who may have mentioned the Pile of Potential. So it might be an internal thing in the company, but wherever it's come from, I love the name. I love the reframe of it not being a bad thing. It is a pile of potential. It's not something to be shameful of.
Yeah. It's really awesome, and it's a good positive way of looking at that. Both the website and that mindset is a good way of framing it.
Yeah.
So sort of outside of that goal of no new armies and building and completing the Seraphon army and finishing off my Deepkin, I've got a couple of options with the Deepkin thanks to Broken Realms. I now need a turtle and should probably finish those 2 Eidolons, which are sort of sitting half painted. So I'm looking forward to doing those. Oh, and the 50 Namati, which now have some more relevance. So outside of those, it's going, I want to get down to the club every 2 weeks. So 1 night a week, every 2 weeks, down at the local club. Because there's not, as we all know, the best thing in this hobby is actually being with other people and rolling dice and spending time with others and sort of contributing to the local scene. So I'm really looking forward to that.
And that was put to me, and I'll throw it to Clint in a second. I'd love to hear what his goals are. But my last tournament my last pre-COVID tournament was SAGT, and having 6 to 7 months off before going to Everwinter, which is in Canberra in November, I couldn't agree more. We do talk about the people, and you give people hugs and have drinks, you catch up, and while that isn't quite what we can do right now, it was just so awesome to see people again in the community, just catch up. It's been such a long time, so having not taking the people side for granted, and often, you know, when there's club nights or, you know, a one-day event at a local game store, we'll go on and go to the next month. I think, at least for myself, it's now like I don't want to miss that, because who knows when the next spike might occur. So let's take advantage while we can.
Yeah, I also sort of noticed it. Yeah, I also sort of notice it from a small scene perspective, in that it only takes a few people to sort of drop out or hide away from the scene, and then you lose that local momentum, and people go and play other game systems or go and do other things, and then you come back and that tournament scene that was there is no longer there, or it's not as vibrant as it was. And sort of our communities need, certainly in smaller scenes, to be nurtured and maintained, and it's through the sort of bonds and in-person connection that we keep those things going, I think.
Yeah, I know for my community in Sydney, Whip Wednesday, or Work in Progress Wednesday, that is definitely a motivator. But I know when I don't post that, because I seem to be posting it every week. It seems to be my job. But when I don't post, nobody posts. So it is interesting that the community needs re-nurturing again, just because, I don't know, people have reprioritized, because, you know, we don't have that constant hamster wheel of tournaments, or they're playing 40K, who knows. But I think certainly the communities getting events back, small events, frequent events, games nights, introducing new players, seems to have kind of taken us back to 2017, 2018.
Yeah. I will just say, you were talking about like going to stuff because you're not sure that whether it's going to be the last one before a spike or whatever. I definitely kicked myself for most of 2020 that I didn't go to SAGT. Don't worry. Like,
well, it's interesting because I ran a small one day called Sigmas, so it was like the week before Christmas, and I had like up to 40 people who attended. And it's interesting because in Sydney, we've just had what we think is the UK strain come through Sydney. So we're kind of, you know, teetering on the fence of, do we go into a lockdown or do we not go into a lockdown? So while I have my next event I'm running in March, there is a chance that it could be cancelled. So depending on how we handle it. So I'm really fortunate that we had Sigmas, really fortunate that we had Everwinter, but you just don't know how this is going to go. The vaccine could be tomorrow. It could spike again. I think take the opportunity while you can, is the way I'm seeing things. Obviously in a very safe way as well. So the event that I ran, we kept social distancing. I had organised meals to be delivered individually packaged. You know, there's lots of hygiene. There's a lot of, you know, tracking of COVID stuff. So it was done in a very safe way, at least to our government regulation.
Mm-hmm.
But let's forget COVID for a second. Clint, what are your goals?
So yeah, you know, Dan said we've got the pact, no new hobby projects. So that sort of includes, you know, being able to build out projects that you're working on. So, you know, I've got my KO or whatever. If I need to buy a unit of Arcanauts to make that work, then that's fine. But it's not like turning around tomorrow and deciding I want to buy, you know, a Slaanesh army or something like that. So that's good. That's going to allow me to paint through my backlog. Sitting down and adding that up has really brought home how much stuff I had. So I've been sort of figuring out what I wanted to keep and what I wanted to sell and what I wanted to paint and things like that. So that's one of my goals, to clear through as much of the sort of 600 models that I had. So we'll see if I manage to paint all of them. And also just play lots of games with ETC, perhaps. You know, I'm going to need to, you know, I'm having to practice a lot. So just basically I've picked OBR. My OBR army's, you know, it's finished. I've got 2,000 points. That's reasonably good. I can just practice and practice and practice. Like I've got 2 games lined up over the weekend to practice. Plus, you know, the team plays TTS practices and stuff like that as we test lists and whatnot. So yeah, lots of games.
I was going to say, have you been using much TTS for that?
Me
given it used
personally,
to be big underrated.
yeah. Me personally, no. But the rest of the team, they all seem to like to schedule games when I'm doing things like this. So it will play a bigger part in the next few months. So yeah, just playing lots of games and getting reasonable again. Because I definitely let that slide.
And for anyone who doesn't know, the ETC is the European Teams Championship that is happening in Luxembourg. So that is a tournament that the world can send a team. So England, America, various European nations, Australia will send a team over, and there is a 5 or a 6 round event. And it's basically a one-on-one event, but they send over a team of 6.
So it's six person teams. So there's all sorts of team strategy and stuff like that involved as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And the ETC, hopefully that it still happens, will be an awesome opportunity as well to play. And obviously, it's a nice goal for you to focus towards too. So
going to ETC was definitely it's been on my hobby bucket list for 6 or 7 years now, pretty much when I first became aware of it and what got to see, because back in 8th edition we had a big contingent of the Australian and Kiwi teams that sort of played in southeast Queensland here, so I got to know them, and then watching them go over and play in Serbia and all that sort of stuff, I'm like, that would be really awesome to do one day. So I'm on the team now. We just have to get there. So
well, fingers crossed, and if nothing more, hopefully it's the following year, but hopefully everything stays the same, and you can safely go to Luxembourg and play 2021. It's late 21, right? It's at least
it's August. So yeah, it's lots of stuff up in the air. It's one of those things, like, who knew a week before Christmas that Sydney would have to turn everything off? It's sort of a week by week basis at the moment. So yeah.
Has that meant you haven't been able to book your flights yet, or get into serious planning?
We're planning. I think all the teams are waiting for the winter FAQ, but flights and stuff like that, I think we're all kind of like, I'm pretty sure all the teams would be doing this. They would just be leaving that as long as they probably can, and making sure that they can reschedule them or get refunds or whatever. It's like there's lots of sort of waiting and seeing for all the teams at the moment. So it just is what it is. No,
that's very cool. Any other goals or any other things you're striving for? Obviously, ETC is a massive one, and clearing your hobby backlog. Very, very cool that you're not going to strive to buy new models, but rather clear out that catalog that you've got that every year just keeps building and building and building, but you never quite go to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Just last night I sold off models that I desperately wanted to paint about 3 years ago. So it's like individual character models. I'm like, if I haven't touched them in 3 years, I'm probably not going to touch them. And so, yeah.
Which is one of the reasons I painted my Zenj, because I'm like, I need to get this done. If I don't get this done now, I'm never going to do it.
It's just about being honest with yourself. It's like, what you say to yourself, oh, I'll paint that one day. I'll paint that one day. Are you actually going to paint it one day? No? Okay. And I know some people don't sell anything, and that's cool. You can have your massive tubs worth of stuff. But yeah, I only want to keep stuff that I'll paint and I'll play and whatever.
I've actually got that plan for Sylvaneth. So I built the funny story, but with my Sylvaneth army is I decided I would go all in on Sylvaneth, and I had a really cool idea in mind. I built up all the models. I'd converted the heads on my Spite Revs. I picked up like 15 Kurnoth Hunters. I was going to convert Magnus the Red into my newer version of Orion. I had all these cool plans in mind. Pick up my battle tome from the store. 6 hours later, there's a reveal show that tells me Cities of Sigmar's coming. My book is still in plastic. Yeah. So I know that when Broken Realms Alarion comes, I'll be selling that.
Man.
when Broken Realms Alario comes, I'm selling my Sylvaneth. Literally the day. There's a Twitter stream where I put a picture of my battle tome and my army in like my garden. I'm like, oh, look what's grown, or the seeds have grown, or whatever. A little smart comment, right? Literally 6 hours later, I'm like, this didn't happen. Like, Cities of Sigmar's coming. I don't care what it looks like. I'm playing it.
That's really bad.
Do you blame me? Like, do you blame me? I've got a whole cabinet here full of Empire Cities models. So.
Cities is your thing, so like Freeguild's your thing. I'm not surprised. Yep.
So my goal. So I think maybe I actually, funnily enough, put up a conversation in Discord, and I set up a whole channel to kind of hear what other people's goals were. And I'd written down I had 5 goals that I was striving for this year. The first one was to get the channel to 10K. I mentioned that earlier. The subscribers. I want to get to the 10,000 subscriber mark, which would be awesome. I would like to do that before middle of the year. I think that is an achievable goal. Just just over 2,500 to go. And seeing people like Haywo Twitch, who have now exceeded 10,000 is truly inspirational. Because there's not a lot of people who have over 10,000 subscribers in Age of Sigmar, and the ones who do often are paint streams, like they do painting tips or they do battle reports, and I do neither of those. So that's one goal that I'm working on. And before anyone asks, no, I'm not doing battle reports. No, I'm not doing painting streams. So I'll get there the hard way. Battle reports would make my life so much easier. The second one is Armies on Parade. So I entered Armies on Parade last year. Because I chose Gargants, it meant that I was building my display board and my painting and building my army 2 months before the competition. So this year I'm taking a little bit more time. I'm planning it out further. And funnily enough, Dan and I share something that he doesn't quite know yet. And that is I'm going back old school as well, tapping into Warhammer Fantasy. And I am going to be building the Cult of Pleasure. So I've decided my Daughters of Cain is going to be a Cult of Pleasure, which is so it will still be Daughters of Cain. So I'm not going to be putting demonettes in, but I will be looking at ways to demonette or Slaneshify my daughters, like the cult of Slaanesh, essentially. So I've been building up a display board. I recently bought the Fane and this Infernal Raptress. I've got some plans to convert the new Slaanesh Palanquin into my Blood Throne or my Cauldron of Blood. I'm looking at ways to incorporate Slaanesh with nods and hints, but not necessarily overwhelm. So things like maybe my Sisters of Slaughter will have demonette claws, but my witch elves will still look like witch elves. So
very cool.
I think for me
it's a callback and a half, isn't it?
Well, I remember seeing the Shadow and Pain box, and I instantly went to Cult of Slaanesh. I thought, oh, they're going to do something crazy with Slaanesh, and like they're in the box. And obviously realizing it was, then learning it was 2 armies. For me, it's something that's always captured my attention. For me, I know it was a 6th edition thing and it got retconned in 7th edition. But for me, there was just something fascinating that Marathi has such a wonderful relationship with Slaanesh, going back to going back to even when she was a maiden before she was a nobody. And being captured by the Chaos Gods and her, natural beauty, and obviously now Age of Sigmarifying it, being in the belly and all this stuff. That's I imagine this might be James Mabry, who's also doing a combined Slaanesh Daughters. So
no,
maybe
That's Chris.
Yeah,
I have to have a chat with Chris to see where we're both going and. If we're going down different paths. I'm going down the Daughters of Cain path with a Slaanesh side. Hopefully you're going a Slaanesh side with Daughters of Cain. But I'll shut up now and I won't tell you any more secrets.
yeah. It's just don't take those cards close to the chest.
For welfare, you're not getting many more of my secrets. But that's the goal. I think for me, I want to tap into Armies on Parade. I did want to attend 3 large events, but who knows what that looks like or if that's possible. The other two things that I wanted to do was I wanted to learn how to airbrush properly. And my birthday is in a couple of days' time, so the thing that I got was a new airbrush set. So I got myself a Iwata setup that Vince Ventrella had recommended, and I'm going to start learning how to airbrush and airbrush well, so I can do some things like OSL and just do more than just base coat priming.
Nice. I got a couple of years ago, my wife's family were trying to be sort of involved in getting me a nice hobby gift for Christmas one year, and they got me a rather dubious looking makeup airbrush, which I have not turned on or used yet, and that is the closest I've ever got to airbrushing, but I'm also airbrush curious for 2021.
I originally got my original airbrush from Dan not from AOS Shorts, that's you. Dan from the Honest War Game, dispossessed Dan, and just before he left Australia, he gave me a whole bunch of things for cheap or free. And I mostly did it just for terrain. I just wanted to get a cheap airbrush. It's a makeup airbrush. It's okay, it does the job, but I wouldn't use it properly to do miniatures, especially like blending of skin. But I really want to learn it as a toolbox a tool in my toolbox. Not necessarily want to be an airbrush painter, but I want to be able to have the choice of doing things like, wonderful gradients on wings, or being able to do color blends that are a lot harder with paintbrush. So.
Yeah.
And then the last goal was I'm putting my money aside. I'm putting money aside every month to be a international travel fund. So knowing that 2022 is more likely when the borders will reopen, I'd like to have at least $5,000 in a kitty that I could use for travel, to go to Adepticon, to maybe apply to be in the ETC or travel to wherever I want to travel without impacting my wife or my my holiday budget. So we could still go to, I'd love to go back to Malta. I could still go back to Malta and go to Adepticon and not have to make a choice, or drag my wife to Adepticon because she's been to Chicago like 5 times already. So I can still do that.
Very cool.
Yep.
So might actually bring up this question in the chat. I think it's a really interesting one. Not completely. It's not specifically about the goals, but Bad Axe had asked, have you ever been starting to paint an army or a unit? I've been halfway through one model and you realize that the interest just isn't there, or it just dies.
Yes.
They've been suffering it with Lumineth. Lumineth's an interesting one, probably a very challenging army. Have you ever felt that you have been in a situation where you've got excited to paint an army, you build it up, you start putting those layers of paint down, and you just, I don't know, it's not for you, or you're not enjoying it? Dan, you said yes.
Yes, my one War Clans test model and my one KO Arcanaut both attest to that.
Clint?
Yeah, sometimes, look, you buy a unit to do some test models or something like that, or you think you want to do an army, and you're painting that test model, and something about it just doesn't click for you. And it could be the models themselves. You might not like them as much as you think you like them, or you're painting them for the wrong reasons. Or it could be the way that you're trying to paint them. Like you said, Lumineth is quite a challenging, army to paint, because it's it has to be clean. The conventional way to paint them is clean and shiny and gold and whatever. And unfortunately, models have that ugly phase, which is not going to be very inspiring when you're painting Lumineth. You have to kind of try and see past that. So my advice is either to think about if you do actually really want to paint Lumineth, or to just kind of switch to something else for a little while and paint that, and then come back and just try and finish that one model. And once you get it to that finish phase, I find that I start to feel a bit skeptical as I'm doing base coats, but then once you put the wash on, you kind of go, okay, I can see where this model is going now, and you kind of get that motivation. So I don't know, Bad Axe, if you want to try painting something else and then come back and just push yourself to that stage, and then you might you can kind of see your destination then, and it builds a bit more enthusiasm, or just switch to painting something else for a while, and then you might find thinking about an alternative color scheme or a different way that you're going to paint the lumineth just makes them click for you as well. So
I know for myself, like I've been doing some test schemes for my daughters, and I was really struggling to bring the concept to life. And now that I've changed from, because I originally was going to do like a drow elf, traditional Dungeons and Dragons, gray, pale purple type skin, very underdark type drow. And I couldn't bring that and my concept of Calibron, because I wanted to do a Calibron Shadow Temple with drow elves. And it was just becoming too black, too gray, too monotoned. And I was struggling. I've gone through a bunch of different test models. And the minute I changed my concept, the minute I changed, I mentioned the Slanesh version of Daughters. I'm now re-inspired. So any ways that you can maybe find hobby cheating, whether it's, putting down your first your first layer of paint with maybe a spray. So if it's a lot of silvers, get mechanic spray, try to find ways you can cheat yourself up forward or faster. I think what you just said as well, like, trying to find some test schemes and push yourself through. And if it means finding a fun army, I know when I paint models, I might do a battle line first, and then I'll do a hero, battle line, hero, kind of mix it up and have some fun along the way. I guess it depends on like where you're struggling, like what part that you're struggling with.
Yeah.
Myself.
It's important to remember that not all ideas are good ideas. So just because you had, it's true though, like just because you've got this color scheme in your head, it might not survive contact with the model. So Coach, you were talking about your drow thing and Calibron, like you'd had it like cooked up in your head.
My Gargants were going to be grey. They were going to be charcoaly fire Gargants from Akshi, and I just couldn't pull the combinations off that I wanted, and they just looked too grey for me. And I had to let it go. Like it got to a point where I got so frustrated, I just let it go, and I tried something else. And I'm now super in love with my model.
Yeah.
You should generate ideas without limitation and without editing or criticize, but then make sure that you go through the process of actually is this ideal plan going to work? Do the sort of editing, critiquing phase once you've got the test models.
Yeah. Well, I can see here that Bad Axe has commented it's mostly the Sentinels. Yeah, loves doing the Light Sphinx and the Pikeman Leader and other pikes, but got 20 archers for Christmas and wanted to work through them.
Yeah.
Just put them aside. Just paint some Dawn Riders or paint some more, what are they called? Wardens? The Pikemen, or paint some of the Hammer dudes. Just Sentinels. I know they're good. Just put them aside, paint some more Lumineth, and eventually you will feel like painting those Sentinels.
Yeah. Chris Welfare's called out another great comment too. Sorry, Dan. He's talked about, don't be afraid to call it out as a concept army. An army doesn't have to be 2,000 points. It doesn't have to be a playable army. You don't have to be always focused on match play. So you, if you don't enjoy certain aspects of it, you can definitely still have concept armies and you don't have to force yourself to be match play focused.
Or you don't have to do every army to your best painting standard. You can go, I want this army because I want to play this army. So I'm going to do rats in the Underdark, and I'm going to it'll be Zenithal, and it will be spots of color, and it'll be good. That's my concept army, and it's done, and I can get onto the thing which I want to do, which is playing games with it.
Yeah. Absolutely. My OBR, a classic example of that. I had a color scheme that a test model that I painted up that was an homage to my old 8th edition Tomb King's army with Cabalite green and bright white bone and a bit of gold and whatever. And I'm like, cool, that's great. But I'll still be painting this in June. So I went and I concept armied it up. So the army is done now. It looks good on the table. It's not the best thing I've ever painted, but it's done and I'm happy with it. And I've just kind of drawn, I've painted them to a level that I'm happy with. So, but my KO will be my next project, and it's not going to be a concept army because I've got the OBR to play with, and I've done, I've gotten that to it. I've got some hobby satisfaction there, and then I'm playing them, and then can move on to something else.
Yeah.
I got my Zedge to that. Sorry, Dan, what are you saying?
I was just going to say, my Seraphon, the focus is on the conversions and the overall theme. So the paint job is actually going to be a whole load of contrast and dry brushing, and hopefully very quick.
It will lend itself to that, though. Like that army will lend itself to those techniques really well, and you'll get a fantastic looking army.
Yeah, no, that's a really good call out. So hopefully it helps more than just our friend Bad Axe, because I can also see some other people having some very similar commonality. But we've got a whole bunch of tools now. I think sometimes even just and I know he was mentioning that the gold trim's killing him. Whether you just either skip that part, whether you come back to it later, maybe towards the end, whatever it might, or try to find a different technique to do your gold trim. And yes, 100% Ron, Seraphon plus contrast is gold. It takes to it very well.
Yeah, my Wraithbone and Skeleton Horde will get me a long way to start.
Yeah, definitely.
Do we have any other goals? Like, do we have any other things in mind? I've got a whole bunch of goals. I think the interesting thing is obviously being very flexible with what happens. Who knows if events will run, how they'll run, the size of the events. I imagine with events, for example, there'll be a lot of demand. So, there might be, at least our events are going to be a lot smaller just due to the nature of the size, and the competition will just be really hard to get that ticket. So whether that means more events are going to pop up, whether it means that you just got to wait on the sidelines and hope for the best. I think just being flexible generally, like I know one of my frustrations with Army on Parade was I just couldn't get my models. I couldn't get the Rohan models. I couldn't get my Gargants for 6 months, which is why I've now started grabbing my stuff now. So I've got more time and got more planning than I have in previous years.
Yeah. I have a sort of meta goal for 2021, which sort of pulls together a whole range of these hobby things, which is I want to finish things. So that applies to the existing armies that I've already got, and it comes to this sense of seeking satisfaction, and satisfaction in actually finishing the army, or satisfaction in actually getting and playing games and going to tournaments. But on the website side and on the content creation side, like I have so many sort of half-started ideas, half-written articles. I've got a 7,500 word article on Lumineth, which I did, and that's sort of half done. I've got about 10,000 words written on Seraphon, breaking down the entire book and tactics and different play styles and all of this stuff. And it didn't get finished. And so a lot of it on the website side will be taking some of these and finishing them off and actually committing to getting these, because I really want to do these sort of long form breakdowns of books with the reflection of not going, right, let's break down the book over the 48 hours as soon as the book turns up. Because I don't have a competitive advantage in that in any way, shape or form. You can go watch Man Reed's book. You can go listen to Facehammer. You can listen to Rob on The Honest Wargamer. You can listen to a range of people who put out really good quality stuff in the sort of early hours of any release. And I can't compete with that, both on how long it takes books to turn up in New Zealand and also on demands on family time. But what I really would like to do is do okay, we've sat with this book for 3 months, we know what it looks like, well, here's the definitive guide. This is how this army plays, and this is what we know about this army, and this is what we know about the trade-offs, and this is what we know about the matchups. And it's the full, as I said, I've done 7,500 words on one, 10,000 words on another faction. Probably shouldn't have started with Seraphon, given the 17 hero choices alone in that book.
More importantly, Chris Welfare just summarized your 7,000 words into take Skinks and Croker and win. So you might have wasted the 7,000 words where Chris has just summarized it so well.
Sure, but those 5 words don't get you very good on the Google rankings, do they, Chris? That's not good for SEO, mate.
Stick to podcast, Chris. But you are right. Like when you think about it and you think about some of those hobby projects or things that you aspire to do and you just don't quite complete them, the longer you sit on them, the less likely you're actually going to produce it, which means that you've completely wasted your time. And I'm sure that that an article like that would add incredible value, whether it was on the day of a book release, 6 months later, because the meta changes. I know when I do my list discussions, so often I will have to revisit the army because what was good now can change so quickly with a winter FAQ, with a meta adjustment, with a points adjustment, some secret list tech that, you know, everyone was focused on one build. Now another build is great. So whenever you're putting out content, I think people are always appreciative to see what we, and I recently did a video with Martin Orlando, you know, 4 months after the book of Lumineth came out. And it was like, cool, now that you've had 30 odd games with Lumineth, what have you learnt? And almost like revisit compared to what Liam and Hayden done very early on. And there were some differences. And I imagine 12 months later, if Martin or somebody else had the same list, it'd be different.
Yeah. Yep. It's that concept that if you start things and you don't finish it, then you've sort of wasted your time, right? Yeah. Unless you've got the enjoyment of doing it whilst you're doing it, if you enjoy painting for painting's sake and the meditation of painting and all of that sort of stuff. But if you're doing it for, I want to complete an army that looks nice on the tabletop, and if you don't finish it, you're just wasting your time and you're one step closer to death. So my goal is to try and finish things this year. I know. Just sort of reflective mood at the end of the year of just need to actually get things finished and enjoy them.
Yep.
That was bleak.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be bleak. It was supposed to be sort of seize the day. Like
it was, but you ended it. It was until you ended with, and then you're one day closer to death, and then it just kind of like down the bottom. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's midnight here anyway.
Yeah, that's fair. And we will wrap up in a second, I think. And I do feel that, you know, I was painting towards the Ever-Chosen competition. I bought Czarnecki 2 years ago to paint. Sydney GT took my priorities, and I eventually never finished Czarnecki. I've got a really nicely painted Czarnecki in my cabinet. It's 90% done, but I didn't put it into the competition. I haven't done anything with it since because I haven't run a Slaanesh army. I'm just kind of sitting there. So yeah. I appreciate what you've just said. I do feel it.
Yeah.
And you are feeling a bit grimgast. Love it.
Yeah. Looking forward to seeing Ron at some events. Hopefully he's going to go to the one in March that we've got in Auckland. But I haven't asked Ron, so we'll find out.
I was gonna bring us home by asking, do you have any events, any things that you're focused towards? I know, Clint, you've mentioned ETC is one of those things you're working towards. I know you've got an event in January as well, but I'll go to Dan. Do you have any events or do you have any other timelines you're working towards or aspiring towards?
Yeah, so I've got a 2-day event in early March where realistically I'm going to be taking the Deepkin 2. Probably won't get a turtle, so it'll probably be a variant of the sort of armies that I was taking at the end of last year. It's good because I know how to use them. And it's not just all eel spam. And then we have our Masters in May. So we moved our Masters to bring it up into May to be sort of the end of the GHB season. We didn't have a Masters in 2020 for obvious reasons. I'm hosting the Masters for 2021 up in Auckland. So I'm going to be TO and host for that. So I need to sort of poke finger and build hype and get everybody excited for Masters in May.
And I put you on the spot with this last one. Last year or the year before, you talked about running AOS Shorts match play event.
Yeah.
When's it happening?
Well, let's just wait until borders are open again and we actually can have a decent size event together. 2022 possible. 2022, I want to do the blooming let's go back to CanCon, AdeptCon, Adepticon's very much on my list.
Yeah, I want to go back. Adepticon. That 2022, I think, is what I'm going to strive for.
I mean, there's a lot of people aiming for 2022 Adepticon, but we'll see how it plays out.
Clint, yourself, any other timelines, any events that you're really striving towards, or some milestones that you have in place?
So events, yeah, I've got the one in January. I've got the ETC. Other non-event stuff though, that need to touch on. The Heralds are coming back in podcast form. Yep.
Is this an exclusive? Have we just broken?
Yeah, it is an exclusive. So
Wow,
and people don't have to wait long. That's all I'll say.
So the soothing sounds of Adam could be back in my earbuds.
Basically, yeah, Adam making me just sit in silence and listen to his awesome jokes. Yeah, so Adam, Travis, and I will be back on the airwaves inside of the next fortnight. So
there you go.
Yep.
What made you bring back the podcast? Because you had a bit of a lull, some life events kicked in. I'm not going to dox anybody, but things came up. You're in a bit of a lull for a while. Why now?
Because we've all got our hobby mojo back. You know, we've got our fire. You know, it had dimmed sort of at the start of last year, and we decided rather than just kind of limp on and force ourselves to make content, we would put it on ice, and then obviously stuff happened. But we've all just been talking recently, and we've all got our hobby mojo back, and we're all keen to talk about Warhammer again. So we'll be back shortly.
Congratulations. That's wonderful.
So, yeah, and with other stuff that's giving the Heralds a bit of airtime at the moment, it's also a good time to be doing it as well. So,
yeah, awesome. The chat is loving this right now. So, very cool. I don't know what Dan's doing. I think he needs to go to bed.
I don't know. Sorry, there's stuff going on all over the place in the back of the cat's being an absolute bastard as it always is.
Wasn't the cat the one that was banging on the keyboard when you did Warhammer Weekly like a couple of years ago?
It came up and purred under the microphone and proceeded to just shoot everybody's ears. Yeah, the cat just likes to interrupt me when I'm on streams. But anyway.
That's why my dog is away.
This is why we're dog people, not cat people.
My dog likes to sit under the microphone and snore, so he has to go outside when I stream. As much as I love dog Cam, he's just a noisy boy. And for me, the events that I have on the radar is in March. Currently, I have Vic GT that I'm focused on. I think I'm going to run Suns again, but maybe a different version of Suns. The week after that, I'm currently running a 2-day narrative event. So that should be a whole bunch of fun. We're going to focus around defending or claiming the Beastgrave. I've got a few tricks up my sleeve to kind of keep my players on their toes. And I don't know. I don't think there's any other events, Clint, in Australia that's kind of past March. I feel like there's people thinking about things and whether Sydney Slaughter returns, whether other events kind of pick up. But I haven't seen much announced post-March.
Nobody's... Yeah, I forgot to mention SAGT, which I'm sure Doom will shoot me for later. I'm going to that on the same weekend you're doing Vic GT. But nobody's game, and I can't say I blame them. Like, I don't think people are overly keen to start planning too far out. They might have stuff happening in the back of their mind. They're like, okay, cool. Well, if we get to March and, maybe in May I'll do a thing. And then like, that's cool. And I'm sure we will see stuff provided, everything's traveling smoothly. But yeah, I certainly wouldn't be announcing my plans to run, a June GT or anything like that.
Anzac Cup, which is traditionally in April, has dates, and because they got cancelled last year and they just pushed it forward, so they're in April. It's a soft launch. It's just the Facebook event. They haven't actually announced anything about tickets or packs or things. There's things that we normally predict that happen through the year. There are certain events that we know in the calendar which may return, but there's nothing hard past March, which
lots of people penciling stuff in, but yeah, and I don't blame them. It's best.
And Chris from Morley Wounds has just kind of, just confirmed what we just said. So he runs Sydney Slaughter along with James Mabry. It's traditionally in the June long weekend, the Queen's birthday. And it's been in our calendar for years now, like 4 or 5 years now. However, I think, it's up in the air right now. We just don't quite know just yet. So probably, and it's a challenge, right? Because you got to plan it, you got to sell tickets, you got to lock in an event, lock in a location. But you can't get too far ahead of yourself because just things change so quickly. So,
yeah,
cool. That's it for me. I think it's an exciting year. I think if I summarize what I'm thinking about 2020, it's an exciting year. I think there is plenty to look forward to. I see there's light at the end of the tunnel. We've gotten into a bit of I think we've kind of gone through some of the hard stuff, and we're now learning how to deal with this effectively, or a bit more effectively than that with kind of the first couple of months that were really tough. But I'm quite optimistic for 2021. That's how I'm feeling anyway.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. Be a great year.
I do just have one more thing to shout out before we sign off and everything.
Is this another mic drop, Clint?
No. But basically, just because we can't have CanCon this year doesn't mean that we gave up on doing awesome things with our hobby for people. So we've got the Call to Glory charity raffle, heraldsofwar.com/charity raffle. And we've got a ton of models there painted by some of the best painters in the AOS scene from Australia and New Zealand. Models there, you can buy raffle tickets to buy those, and there's a range of causes like Beyond Blue and the Cancer Council and Careflight, and I think James's is going to Wombat Sanctuary, which is really cool. So yeah, absolutely. There we go on the page there. Jump on there, Heralds of War. You can just go to the webpage, heraldsofwar.com. There's a big banner, and yeah, you can buy raffle tickets to have a chance to win some of these amazing models. And if you've kind of just want one of everything, you can jump on there. But you can see who painted what, links to their Instagram and stuff, and where that money is going. So I painted up a cheeky Manfred to throw in, because how could I not do a Manfred in anything? So yeah, the ticket sales have been really good. I'm super thankful to the community. I think somebody asked me earlier in the week like how it was going and if I was happy with it, and I sort of said to them, when stuff like this comes up, when there are charity things and when there is the opportunity to do good with the hobby, our community is gold class, outstanding, super generous with both time and money. And it makes me super proud to be a part of it. So yeah, thank you to all those who have bought tickets. But if you haven't yet, you've got until the end of the month. And then we're going to I'll probably draw them live on Twitch.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So,
and speaking of CanCon, I don't know if anyone has any plans about CanCon. Obviously, CanCon's cancelled. Some people are thinking about hobby streams or maybe, bringing each other back. I know there are some events happening very locally. So keep an eye out if you are in Australia. Things might be happening. I don't know. I know a certain person in the chat or was in the chat was considering some things. But who knows? We did have Adepticon at home, but who knows what Australia's going to be like. That's definitely get onto the charity. I will put the links in the episode description, but heraldsofwar.com/charity raffle. And when I look at the range here, you got Sean Benson, James Lynch, forget Clint for a second. You got Brant, you got Travis, you got James Mabry, you got Gemma Shepherd, you got Sloan from New Zealand. All 8 of these people, including yourself, Clint, are very talented, very professional, outstanding painters. So regardless of which one you go for, you are going to get yourself a sweet model should you win it. But more importantly, you're supporting some pretty awesome charities along the way. So kudos to you guys for organizing this.
It's really all about the painters putting their time and efforts in. So
Yeah, who do you cat across? Like, shout out to cat across. Like,
That's
Trav.
Trav.
That's a big model. That's a like not to like. I'm not saying anything about anyone else's model because they're all awesome. Like, I look at, is that Sloan? I think.
Yep. Sloan did that.
That's awesome. Like Gemma Shepherd did the Nurgle unit. Like, they're all awesome. They are all. I would be happy. I went all in. I did one of everything plus a few extras. But if I won any of these, I'd be super impressed. I'd be so happy to get any of these, including Manfred on foot, on horse.
On a horse. That is my favorite GW model of all time. So I had to paint that. So,
Dan, thank you very much. Anything you want to shout out? If people want to go see more about Dan, aoshorts.com. Awesome blog. Not so awesome Facebook. I noticed you haven't updated your Facebook in over 6 months, so get back onto that.
Facebook is awful. Don't go on it.
It's July. It's been so long. But you are very active on Twitter, so go give Dan a follow. His links in the below as well, and the blog is awesome. Very, very informative. You'll see a lot of cool stuff from the community, but also lists and comparisons. And he'll be putting up a 7,000-word article very soon about Seraphon. So if you're interested in very technical insights, harass him on Twitter and ask him when is the article, and then it's almost like your dad, like, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Is the article up? Is the article up? And just like harass him until he puts it out.
Don't make me turn this blog around.
Don't make me turn this podcast.
Shut it all down.
Toys up. But Dan, any shout outs, anything you want to say before kind of bring this home?
Not really. Nothing particular to shout out apart from just everyone be kind to each other and have an awesome 2021. And may everybody succeed in their hobby goals.
Oh, virtual hugs.
Yeah. I'm just going to leave you hanging there.
Really weird. And anyone who listens to this in podcast form is like, why is it just a weird silence? Clint, you've had enough shout outs, dude. You've relaunched your podcast. You've shouted yourself out on Tuesdays to Twitch. Go check out Clint. It's a very fun show. I like jumping in there just to annoy Clint at times and distract him from what he's trying to do. But Clint, and obviously you got the charity raffle as well, so go check that out. Definitely donate some cash to a worthy cause while picking up a sweet model potentially. But Clint, anything else you'll want to shout out?
No, I've done all my shout outs. Catch me on Twitch yeah, that's fine. Catch me on Twitch on Tuesdays. Go buy a raffle ticket and you'll know when the podcast's out because I will be splashing that everywhere. So,
more importantly, Adam will be annoying the crap out of everyone again. I noticed he tagged me today with a smart-ass comment, which must mean Adam is back. He has been quiet, and that now add one and one together, that makes complete sense.
How many? Yeah. Come on, Clint, give us a shout out. How many references to the chase are there in the return episode of Heralds of War?
I'm not at liberty to say.
Well, we're going to have to listen to that episode, team. Heralds of War, go put it in your podcast stream. Something is coming very soon. You won't want to miss it. It'll be the hottest thing in your ears since WAP.
Please don't do that. Don't
look at me like I'm using cool people, new millennial kid references. Like that's the lingo, right? Like,
aren't you the oldest one here?
Shut up.
Time to wrap up.
Yeah.
All right. All right, we're ending. Guys, thank you very much for hanging out. You know the deal. Like, subscribe, hashtag best discussion ever. If you have any hobby goals, I'd love to hear about them. I legitimately would love to hear what your hobby goals are for the year. And let's bring this home, Dan. We've got to show this. This is what Dan spent his 2020 doing. That was Dan drilling bases for his Deepkin before round one of a tournament, literally on the day in a car park.
In my defense, I had a power cut the night before, so I lost the entire evening's hobby before going to the event and had to be up at 4 a.m. to travel to the event. But yes, that was me drilling bases and flight stands in a car park before round one.
I'm going to end the stream with a beautiful comment from Badax, who said Dan went from Grimghast to using Inspiring Presence. So that was beautiful. Yeah. Dan, Clint, thank you very much. It was an awesome little chat that we had, and I'll see you guys on the next hobby stream.
Yeah.
I hope you found that discussion valuable. If you did, give the video the old thumbs up. And if you have a comment or an insight, leave it in the comment section below. The champions over here are my AOS Coach Patreons and YouTube members. So you guys are bloody legends. Thank you for all the support. If you want to know more about the support programs, the links are below down here in the episode description, along with a link to the Discord server so we can continue this conversation. Until next time, don't forget to name your characters and have a good one.